Welcome to ISC 2019. I'm here with Ideal Systems to talk about how their business is evolving as the industry is changing. Guys, you have a long history in broadcast and you're a well-known name and a well-known brand. And over the past few years, you've transitioned into the world of AV. How did that idea come about? How are you guys coming into AV and what do you bring to the table?
Well, after more than 30 years in the broadcast world, as you said, a lot of the clients have started to know us through the various evolutions of the broadcast. And we got into AV, I think, a little bit by public demand. A lot of our broadcast customers started realizing that they had other needs than purely broadcasting needs. Back office needs, how to do migrations, how to migrate multiple sites. So that was one of the drivers behind us getting into that market. The second one was we've seen that a lot of the current AV market is shifting towards a higher end broadcast category needs. And so we've decided, I think 2-3 years ago, to take it seriously as in opening it under the name AV. And we opened an AV division starting with Hong Kong and Singapore, where Fintan is based. And from there we started spreading out and looking at various different customers in the market. So it's a mix of our traditional broadcast customers that want to do some AV projects or AV infrastructure, and existing AV customers such as large banks, MNCs, hospitality, hospitals, and various other AV customers.
Yeah, I'd like to add a bit to that, because just in terms of your question of our transition to AV, we're not doing a business pivot here. It's actually an addition of AV. So we're bolting AV onto our existing business, and that in a way is probably what will give us a USP in the AV market. It'll give us a differentiator, because we find when we put the AV onto the back of the broadcast business, we've already built out, as Guillaume said, nearly 30 years here. We've built out a large geographic network. We've sunk the money in the offices, in the HR, the logistics. So we're operationally ready across Asia, and then rolling out the AV within that infrastructure is going to be a quick rollout for us. But what's different is we have a lot of skills that we had honed in the broadcast business, software development. When we build a broadcaster, today it's more like building a data center. We have interior design for control rooms. All of those things at back end, our turnkey broadcast business, work very well in the AV, and what we see as a competitive advantage for us in AV is, there's kind of an ability for us to use that support service and use our existing skill set that we'd built up in broadcast and use it with AV and use it as we move and grow our AV team. That's kind of why Updesh is here, actually.
So one of the other things that we are looking at is we have some pure AV guys in the countries that we have opened up. And at the same time, like me, I'm from the broadcast industry, and we are trying to reskill some of the broadcast engineers to do some of the AV part, which is like going into some of these large exhibitions. ISC is part of the reskilling process. So doing a bit of reskilling, and we also come up against projects that I call them hybrid in nature. So there's a demand for high-end broadcast, and within that space, there's always a AV portion, which is, for example, if you do a auditorium, there's a need to do cameras, high-end broadcast, but there was always an AV element to that, which we now take to the plate as well. So that's part of the rollout across the region.
Yeah, because in broad strokes, there's not much difference between broadcast and AV. Both of the industries, what we do is we take signal from point A to point B, and how that is achieved might be different, but overall, that's what we do.
Well, there's also been, we were discussing this earlier, and you see it in the type of customers and vendors that are present in ISC. There's also been in the past 4 or 5 years a convergence between AV and broadcast, and where before the line might have been very clear that this was a broadcast project and this is an AV project. With the emergence of 5G, with the emergence of, especially of IP and other technologies that are driving that, you start having a gray line between both industries, and so they're all becoming, as they're saying, they're all becoming really a large end-to-end project with an IT component, an IP component, a broadcast component, etc. And as this is coming out, we're very well equipped to do that because we've understood already a large part of our traditional business, and we're seeing emerging needs from traditional AV clients that are overlapping on that.
Yeah, this is a good fit. We're a few years into this rollout and bolt-on. The results that we're seeing are very promising. AV is becoming a significant portion of our revenue, and as I sit almost between what are two teams, I'm actually seeing them knit together in a way which is really nice, because sometimes you don't know if it's going to be an acrimonious thing, if there's going to be a competitive thing internally, because but it's actually been the AV, because we're building our AV team with experts, right? We're a systems integrator. We have to be in a leading position in architecture and technology. So we're pulling in a lot of existing, well-experienced AV professionals in Asia, and we're currently hiring, across the board from sales to pre-sales to engineering support. So so we're very acquisitive of good AV talent at the moment. But what I'm finding is those guys are really happy to have the broadcast engineer guys as an extra line of technical support and things that maybe Updesh's broadcast teams have been working in 4K and IP for a lot of years, and have a very deep understanding. And that really helps. Some of the guys who we're just upgrading video conferencing to 4K systems now. We know where the problems are. Yep. So I think it gives us an extra depth in the systems design and in the support. I find our broadcast engineers are a lot less nervous to pull a box apart and get in with a screwdriver and a soldering iron and get dirty, as opposed to just replace the box and stuff like that. So it's an interesting journey. Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's a bit of fun.
You highlighted Singapore and Hong Kong as two specific APAC locations that you're already present in, and reports show that APAC is on track by 2023 to become the largest AV market in terms of the three major regions. What are your plans for the region? How do you intend on growing, and what's the roadmap, so to speak, so that you're in place to make full use of all this growth that's going to happen?
If you look at the AV market compared to the broadcast market, in terms of segments, it's a much more fragmented market. As much as each country has a national broadcaster, in AV you have the hospitality market, you have the enterprise, you have the banks, you have a multitude of other markets. And so to address that, we're not naive. We know we won't be able to address all markets. But what we're trying to do is, if you look at Hong Kong, for example, it's a market where we will be focusing much more on the large regional MNCs, especially in finance and banking, and we're starting to see some traction of projects we have been delivering. Whereas I think Southeast Asia, they have a different approach to the market.
Realistically, it's a much wider market, and you could say, I would like to grow the hospitality, I'd like to grow the healthcare, I'd like to grow the government. But the reality is, it's as we find the people. So it's growing in line with the caliber and the capacity of the human resource that we're bringing on board. I think it's a much wider market. There's a finite number of broadcasters in each country. It's a finite market, and that's probably why today we have so many offices across Asia. For us to grow our revenue historically, we had to go to more countries to find more broadcasters. Where in AV, the slicing and dicing is there's a lot more definable silos that require specific skill sets, and I think going back to Updesh, coming here to ISE or going to Infocom in the US, even our existing AV team that have come on, they come to these shows and they're learning about more products. There's a much wider variety of product vendors than we had dealt with in broadcast, I think. And the subtleties of the differences in speakers or LEDs or switching mechanisms, a whole lot. So in a way it's kind of exciting because it's a whole new world especially for the guys coming from broadcast. It's like, wow, we've been working a lot with the same manufacturers for many years. So now we've got a whole new palette, if you like. That's kind of fun, but it also is back to square one for some of us.
Yeah.
So we're bringing in guys who have a lot of knowledge, and the rest of us, are on a steep learning curve. But the mix, it's cool, it's exciting, it's invigorating. Organizationally, I think it's a great thing, actually.
It's a much bigger market as well in terms of actual total available market compared to broadcast. It seems to us that it's never ending, so it's very good, especially in APAC. So we already, like Fintan said, we already have the footprint that we've developed over years of experience in each country, and we're very localized, I would say. So our Singapore staff is mostly Singaporean, our Indonesian staff is mostly Indonesian, etc. So we're very local for a global company, and we're leveraging this to approach regional contracts in AV. Because most of the contracts we see in AV compared to broadcast has very little regional deals.
Yep.
They'll have country by country, whereas AV you'll have regional deals, especially in the banking sector.
Yeah, I think some of the like one of the large leverage that we see is also looking at things like 24/7 support kind of things, which is very dominant in the broadcast world, where you give 24/7 support. If we should be able to bring this type of support for the AV market as well. So sort of turning this into a new support segment as well.
Add on, I've thought of another part that we had. So that we have a little known live sports division as well. So I think last year we did 120...
200 matches.
200 football matches, live coverage in Malaysia. But what we're finding is in the corporate space, as Guillaume alluded to earlier, that the corporate AV, internal channel, internal communications, event spaces, they're becoming more sophisticated. And live broadcasting, having a webinar or being able to deliver over OTT. So we're seeing a blend of what we do in our live broadcast, in our broadcast, and our AV. And it really is. This is a kind of combination. There's definitely a convergence here.
Yes.
It's a convergence story, and it's not a well-documented convergence story as well. Apart from your magazine, which is fantastic,
Thank you so much.
we don't read so much about the true convergence, where we bring our team literally out of a football stadium to help maybe an AV event to deliver live coverage to OTT, to mobile devices.
Yeah, it was a conference from a hotel to China. That's what we did.
I mean, somebody in the industry once said it's an evolution, not a revolution.
Yep.
And I think, I don't know, I don't remember him. I think it's Fintan Mc Kiernan said that. But I like to quote. I had to say it. But I like to quote it because really, our evolution into the AV market has been that we understand it's going to be progressive. We understand that you can have the capabilities, but you need to build a brand name, especially in an industry like AV.
Yep.
One thing that's interesting, what we are bringing to the AV business, I think you alluded to that, is we come in broadcast from a mission-critical business. I can't have a downtime in a live studio. I can't have an equipment failure without having massive financial repercussions on our business.
So if the Formula One falls off here,
absolutely. So
heads fall off shoulders, that's
we
just
still have our heads, so
happens,
something's been going right. But But really, bringing this into the AV, we've always been very surprised at how there's less this sense of urgency, and a lot of companies have been accepted subpar, or as I would say,
we bring that quality.
Subpar connectivity as part of what it is anyways, because this box doesn't work or that doesn't work. When we came into this market, that was one of our discussions saying, wow, we can't do this in broadcast. So I think that's one of the pluses we're going to add to this market, is really bringing this mission critical approach to systems. Whether you're migrating an office from one part of Hong Kong to another, whether you have a conf call with a CEO,
we're comfortable in that space. I remember a number of years ago, and I won't say the names of the TV channels involved, but it was an international sporting event that was broadcast live in a street in Singapore, and the signal went black, and I watched a network operator who was a customer of ours check his phone, and like it wasn't us, and I watched a television channel operator who was a customer of ours. It's not our problem. And I watched a satellite operator who was a customer of ours. So we're used to being the firing line, you know. So, but when we bring that into AV, you know, we have the mentality. There's two things I have. One is this, you know, this very mission critical, which we live with. It's just everything. Almost everything in broadcast is mission critical. Your channels can't go off air, so you live with that. And then the second thing that we bring into AV, and I hope we can maintain this as we grow, because we're growing very quickly in AV. But we lived in a world where there were very few broadcasters. So repeat customers and looking after our customer was very important, because there aren't many customers. We didn't have many, because it wasn't a very, you know, AV, there's lots of customers. There's corporate, there's government, there's hotels, there's universities, there's hospitals, you name it. But we had this world where you can't not deliver. You always have to, and you always have to
Customer
deliver well.
retention.
You can't lose.
Important.
So we bring that kind of customer first approach into AV. I think it's you know, that coupled within it's an interesting space. I think you know, we're early in. We're still not you know, we're still not the most recognized brand in AV in Asia, but it's changing quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Lovely talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.